Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So Hare Krishna to all the devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. Vancha kalpataru bhayascha kripa sindhubevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. So it's a great privilege today for me to take all of you devotees on a virtual yatra to Vishakhapatnam. So welcome to Vishakhapatnam, and we will go on a virtual journey to this very, very beautiful city. Vishakhapatnam is one of the 100 fastest growing cities in the world and one of the largest and the most beautiful city in the state of Andhra Pradesh. So today we are going to visit all the places in and around Vishakhapatnam. So before we start any journey, we usually take blessings of Lord Nrsingadev. But today we are actually journeying to go and visit Nrsingadev himself. So Vishakhapatnam is very, very famous for the very, very ancient Nrsimhadev temple. So this city has a very, very unique position in the Gaudiya Vaishnav history, with so many special visitors, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself visiting this place, and lot of Vaishnava Acharyas visiting this place, and a very, very beautiful ISKCON temple coming up in this city. So Vishakhapatnam city has mention in Ramayana. Vishakhapatnam city has a mention in Mahabharata. We have seen in Ramayana that Vishakhapatnam is also part of the Dandakaranya forest. So actually Lord Ram and Lakshmanji, they had actually come here and is in search of Sita Mata, and and even Hanuman and Jambavan, they did make their monkey army. When they made their monkey army, they did recruit some of them from Vishakhapatnam forest. So it does have a mention in Ramayana, it does have a mention in Mahabharata, because the Pandavas, after the Lakshagraha episode, when they were incognito, so they stayed in a place here which is very close to Vizag, maybe 30 to 40 kilometers, a place called Karnavati village. So the Pandavas with Kunti Devi were staying here, and they were staying in some villager's house. And that village happened to be a place where a particular Asur called Bakasur was attacking them regularly. So the villagers had a contract with him that he shouldn't attack anybody in the village, and they will keep sending him every week, one person from any family in the village. So every family was, sending somebody or the other every week. And finally, the chance came for the family wherein Pandavas were staying. So then Pandavas felt that it was their duty to help that family who had given them shelter. So then they decide to send Bhima. So then Bhima goes with the bullock cart full of food items, and then we know what Bhima will do. He fights with Bakasur, and he actually ends up killing Bakasur. So because he killed Bakasur, that place came to be known as Bhimani Patnam, where Bhima killed Bakasur, and Bhima felt that his killing of Bakasur was possible only by the grace of Lord Shiva. So he established a Shiva Linga in this place, and it's called Bhimeshwar Mahadev. So like that, we see Vishakhapatnam has a mention in Ramayana, Vishakhapatnam has a mention in Mahabharata. And how did Vishakhapatnam get this name Vishakhapatnam? Vishakhapatnam, what I heard, of course there are many, many versions. There were some folk tales about how there was a Buddhist princess called Vishakha, and there was a lot of Buddhist influence here in this city. Even now we have remnants of the Buddhist sites like Thotlakunda and all, and the city was named behind this Buddhist princess called Vishakha. And whereas there are some other historians who say that there was a king by the name Vishakha Varma, and he was greatly influenced by the beauty of Vishakha Sakhi, and he named this city behind her name called the Vishakhapatnam. Patnam basically means a city. And of course this version, as devotees, we would like to believe that maybe this city was named behind Vishakha Devi. But whether it is true or not, we are happy to recite this name regularly in our day-to-day life, Vishakhapatnam, and it reminds us so much of Radharani's Priya Sakhi, Vishakha. Whereas the local people are of opinion that it's basically, Vishakhapatnam basically means in Telugu language, see, they don't say Vishakhapatnam, they say Visakhapatnam. So Visakhapatnam is like Iska, Iska in Telugu language means basically sand. And Vishakha means, Vishakha is Vishal, like, bigger stretch of sand. That's what they say, the local Telugu people. So like that, there are so many versions of how this place came to be known as Vishakhapatnam. But however, nobody calls anymore Vishakhapatnam, they simply call it Vizag in a short form. So it's a very, very beautiful city. It's bordered on three sides with the serene stillness of Verdant Hills, and it's overlooking the very cool and refreshing waters of Bay of Bengal. It's a very, very beautiful city. And for us devotees, it's all the more special because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came here to this city. If we read Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 7, we know that Mahaprabhu started his South Indian tour. So we know that in the month of Magha, Mahaprabhu took sannyas, and then in the month of Falgun, he went to Jagannath Puri. And after Dol Yatra, in the month of Chaitra, he delivered Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, made him a devotee. And then in the month of Vaishak, he decides to go on a South Indian Yatra. So we know this whole chapter is dedicated to the conversations between Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Nityananda Prabhu and Mahaprabhu, and where they're insisting, that he shouldn't go alone. And Mahaprabhu is like arguing with Nityananda. Nityananda Prabhu is like, take me with you. And Mahaprabhu is like, if I take you with me, one day you broke my sannyas danda, and one day you misguided me. You said, Vrindavan, but you ended up taking me to Advaita Acharya's house. So I don't want to go with you. And then Nityananda Prabhu arranged for Krishnadas Brahmachari, a Brahmin, to accompany Mahaprabhu. So then finally, very reluctantly, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya bids farewell to the Lord by giving him 4 sets of clothes. And then as the Lord is leaving, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is almost falling down unconscious. And then he's again, retrieves himself, revives himself. And then he makes a special request to Mahaprabhu. He says, my Lord, since you are going on the South Indian Yatra, do visit Ramananda Rai. He stays near the bank of Godavari, and he's a devotee. So please do visit him. So Mahaprabhu promises that I will definitely visit Ramananda Rai. So from there on, en route the Alarnath deities, after having the darshan, Mahaprabhu with Krishna Das comes down south and first enters Sri Kurma Kshetra. So we all know there is a very, very famous temple of Kurma Dev here, not very far from Vishakhapatnam. In and around Vishakhapatnam, there are 2 important temples. One is Sri Kurma Kshetra and one is Simhachalam temple. And both these temples are among the important 108 Sri Vaishnava Divya Kshetras. The Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya devotees have listed around 108 main temples which a devotee is supposed to, any Vishnu devotee is supposed to visit in his lifetime. And of course, you can't finish visiting all the 108 because out of that, one is Vaikuntha. And so it's only after you go to Vaikuntha you finish your 108 Divya Desha Darshan. So the Sri Kurma Kshetra temple is very, very unique. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after taking sannyas, this is the first temple that he's visiting in South India. So even today, if you go to the Sri Kurma Kshetra temple, you can actually see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu footprints there. They have put it as a memory of his visit to Sri Kurma Kshetra. So Kurma Kshetra temple is the temple of Kurma Dev, and I believe it's the world's only temple where you can, have this beautiful darshan of Kurma Bhagwan. You can actually go inside the sanctum sanctorium. You can touch the deities, and it's a very, very beautiful ancient temple. The Sthala Puran of the temple says that there was a king called Shweta Chakravarti, and he was a very pious king, and he had a more pious wife called Vishnupriya, and she used to follow Ekadashi Vrata and all the other, all the other vratas, and she was very sincere devotee. So once it so happened that she was doing her Ekadashi Vrata, And the king approached her, to associate with her. So then she informs the king that, today is my vrata, so I would like to, follow celibacy. And the king was, the king was reluctant. The king was not ready to listen to her. So when the king tried to touch her, Vishnu Priya, she goes inside her puja room and she starts praying to the Lord. My Lord, please protect me. Please protect my vows. On this day of Ekadashi, I do not want to mate with my husband. So now when the Lord hears her prayers, he immediately sends Ganga Devi. And then Ganga Devi, in the form of a stream, comes in between her husband and her. And not only that, Ganga Devi comes with such a force, she actually floods the whole place. And the king is running for his life. So he starts climbing a mountain just to save himself. So when he's on the top of this mountain and he's already tired, and then his minister informs him that this whole thing is happening because your wife is a very good devotee and you're trying to break her vrata. So he becomes very, he's repenting so much and he becomes very sad. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. And the moment he starts repenting, Narad Muni comes there to his rescue. And then Narad Muni initiates him with the Kurma Narayan mantra. So then for around 300 years, he does tapasya on a single toe, with a lot of austerity during the summer, during the winter, different seasons. He's enduring all the different climatic conditions. And finally, he sees Lord Kurmadev face to face. And then Lord Kurmadev says, I'm very happy with your tapasya and, I would like to give you some boon. And then Lord observes that, he's very tired and fatigued and his health is deteriorated because he's been doing tapasya for more than 300 years. So what Lord does out of his mercy, the Lord has Sudarshan Chakra in one hand. So he just puts his Sudarshan Chakra down on the earth, and there immediately there is an impression formed there which is filled up with water, and a small pond comes up there. And then Lord asks him to take bath in that pond. So immediately Shweta Chakravarti takes bath in that pond and he becomes young and healthy again. So then he says, my Lord, I don't want anything. I just want to worship you in this form which you came in front of me. So Lord agrees, and he immediately manifests himself in the form of a murti, form of a vigraha. So then Vigraha needs to be installed. So he asks Narad Muni, so Guru Maharaj, so can you install? And Narad Muni says, I don't know the mantras, better get Brahma to install. So then both of them go together to Satyalok, and then they invite Brahma, and then Brahmaji comes, and then he establishes this Shri Kurma Vigraha with the Gopal Yantra. And the king becomes so happy. So very, very ancient temple, and the same deities have been worshipping, from Satya Yuga. After that, of course, over the time, the temple got, the deities got buried in because of the Islamic invasions and so many other problems. And then later on again, it got revived. A very beautiful story, a very beautiful Leela connected to the Sri Kurmam temple is about Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya established the Seva Puja in this temple because actually Ramanujacharya was in Jagannath Puri, and when he went there, he was not very happy with the worshipping the puja standards of the Jagannath temple. So he decided that there should be some changes and there should be more perfect puja standards. The deity seva should be done properly. So he approaches the king and says, I need to change certain things here, and I can bring my whole staff and my disciples and we will do a good job. Why not you give us an opportunity? And the king was very happy. Why not? So the king called all the pandas of Jagannath Puri temple and said that, we don't need your services anymore, and tomorrow morning Ramanujacharya with his disciples are going to take care of the temple henceforth. And they're going to establish, high class standards of deity worship. So when the Pandas of Puri came to know that, they were very upset. They went right inside the sanctum sanctorium and they started fighting with Jagannath. We all know that the Puri Pandas have very, very special relation with the Lord. For them, Lord is not Lord. Lord is their friend. Lord is their son. Lord is everything. Lord is a part of their family. So they start chastising Lord. They said, "Oh Kalia, oh black one, you not only have a skin which is black in color, you also have a heart which is black in color. You're so heartless. We worshipped you with so much love and affection for so many years, and now somebody walks in, appeasing you that we will do better worship, and then you are ready to give our service away to them. How can you be so heartless? How come you're not attached to your devotees?" And then the other Pandas are like, "Yeah, he's always been like that. He did that to Yashoda Mata also. Yashoda Mata brought you up with so much love and affection. But when Akrur came to take you to Mathura, you were so excited with the prospect of going and seeing some new city. And you were ready to leave your mother and father, and you just climbed the chariot with Akrura and you left. And you never came back. So you are like that. You don't care for your devotees." So they've been fighting with Jagannath and they're crying, and that's about it. And they go home. And next day morning, to everybody's surprise, Ramanujacharya never turns up. So the king is waiting and his whole entourage is waiting and all the ministers are waiting and the Puri Pandas are also, at one side just waiting because now they have to officially hand over, the keys and everything to the disciples of Ramanujacharya. But he never turns up. The king is waiting and waiting. It's morning and then mid-afternoon and evening, and they see Ramanujacharya never turned up. So then they say, "All right, we don't know what happened to him, so you please continue your service." But what exactly happened with Ramanujacharya is, while he was sleeping in the night, a Lord took him with his bed and threw him out of Puri. And, they throw him into Sri Kurma Kshetra. And whereas, of course, Bhakti Vinod Thakur says that before Lord threw him to Kurma Kshetra, Lord actually sent him to Navadvip Dham. And there he had a vision and he saw Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And he was so happy to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he told him that, "I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to stay in Navadvip Dham and I want to preach your glories." And then Gauranga Mahaprabhu tells him that this is not the right time. You continue what you are doing and you will come back. When I come here as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and at that time you will come back, as Ananta, and I'll be giving you some service in my Leela, but now is not the time. So then from there, he's in Sri Kurmam. So next day morning, when he just opens his eyes and he sees with his bed, he is transported to Sri Kurma Kshetra. But he doesn't know what is a Kurma Kshetra. So what he basically sees is there is some kind of a Shivalinga, and he sees that everybody is worshipping Shivalinga. So out of reverence for Lord Shiva, he starts fasting. And then after some time he realizes, no, this is not Shivalinga. There's a small head, and there's small 2 legs, and there's small 2 hands, and there's a small tail. And then he understands, oh, this is Kurma Bhagwan. Then he immediately informs the local people, oh, this is not Shivalinga, this is Kurma. And then he establishes a temple and his disciples who are in Puri, they're still searching, where is our Guru Maharaj? What happened to him? And then they're searching and they come up to this place, Sri Kurma. And there Ramanujacharya by that time is already famous in that place, and they ask for him. And then finally they meet their Guru, and then he tells them that you have to establish Seva Puja in this temple. So then they just established the whole system. So Ramanujacharya, along with Kurma Dev, he also establishes the deities of Sudevi and Bhudevi. And Madhavacharya came to that temple. So Madhavacharya, when he came, he installed the Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman deities. And when Shankaracharya came, he installed the Sudarshan Chakra. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, he installed the Harinam, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He installed the congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So even today when we go there, we can see the footprints of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Lavakush came there during the Treta Yuga, and Durvasa Muni came there, and Balaramji came there in Dwapar Yuga to Sri Kurma Kshetra. But Balaramji was not allowed inside. Balaramji was stopped at the gate by Bhairav. Lord Shiva as Bhairav is the Kshetra Palaka. So he was not allowing Balramji. He didn't recognize Balramji. He's like, who are you? Why do you want to go inside? And Balramji gets so upset, he just throws him out from there. And then after that, he realizes, of course, that this is Balaram, but then it's too late. And then I heard from the local people out there that henceforth, Balramji said that no more Shiva, Hanumanji will be the Kshetra Palak there. So then Hanumanji becomes the security guard, and even as of today, he's the one who guards that temple. So like that, there are many, many beautiful, beautiful stories associated with beautiful, beautiful leelas associated with Kurma Bhagavan. Other day when I visited, I heard a local devotee narrating a very beautiful pastime. He says, Bilva Mangal Thakur came here, and which was news for me. I never heard that before. He said, in fact, he said that the deity was facing towards the east. But it so happened that Bilva Mangal Thakur composed so many beautiful bhajans, and when he was singing those bhajans, the Lord was so amazed and was so attracted to his bhajan that Lord turned his face towards the west to hear his bhajans. So now it so happened that the Lord's body is facing east, but his head is turned towards west. Now usually the Dvajastambha of any temple has to be there facing the deities. But this Dvajastambha, if it faces the body, then it is missing on the face. And if it's facing the Lord's face, then it misses out on the body. So then they decided to have two Dvajastambhas. So I think this is maybe one of the only temples in the world which has two Dvajastambhas on the either sides of the temple. So like that, the Sri Kurmashantra temple is very, very beautiful. Even today, we can see the Shweta Pushkarini. When the devotees go there, after taking the darshan, they also take bath in the Shweta Pushkarini. And it is said that, every avatara of Lord has a specific purpose. Like we see in the Narasingha avatar, Lord is so protective towards his devotees. Similarly, in the Kurma avatar, Lord protects our vows. So as devotees, there's so many vows we take, chanting our 16 rounds, doing our Ekadashi Vrata, following the Damodar Mas, Purushottam Mas, Chatur Mas, and so many such things. So it is said that, if somebody wants blessings, somebody wants, somebody wants to be empowered to complete their vows, then they should worship Kurmadev. So this is the place, if you want to complete your vows successfully, then you come to Kurmadev Bhagwan and take his blessings. So like that, if you see, this pastime is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 7, the Lord's tour to South India. So you see, I think from verse number 113, you will see that this whole tour of South India begins. Now there is a very, very special pastime that happened in Kurma Kshetra, and that is Lord's meeting with the Kurma Brahman. See, when the Lord started his South Indian Yatra, he was all alone. He and Krishnadas, his assistant. And they used to go from village to village. And wherever the Lord goes, he's staying in different people's house, taking prasadam, making them devotee, and then going to the next place, and then going to the next place. So here, Lord visits Kurma Brahman. Now, Kurma Brahman is a very nice devotee. He welcomes the Lord into his house, washes the feet of the lotus feet of the Lord, offers him lots of nice prasadam, and then by the touch of the Lord, because that water which washes the Lord's feet, he drinks it and also distributes it to his family member. He becomes a very, very good devotee. He gets Krishna Prem. And now when it is time for the Lord to leave, he starts crying. He says, I'll just follow you. I don't want to stay in my house anymore. I have no attachment to my family members. I just want to be with you. I'll simply follow you. Wherever you go, I just want to be with you. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives him a very important instruction. He says, don't say that. You are a grihastha. You should stay at home. You preach to your family members and preach to other people around, and that is your duty. And then he gives his very famous instruction. He says, Jare dekho, tare kaho, Krishna upadesh. Amaragyaye Guru Hoye Taroe Desh. So this very, very famous and important instruction Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave to Kurma Brahman in Srikakulam, which is very close to Vishakhapatnam. And the other special thing that happened is there was a Vipra, a Brahmin by the name of Vasudev. And this Vasudev Vipra, he was suffering from leprosy. So as a result of that, he had a lot of wounds in his body, open wounds. And there were a lot of small, small insects who were eating those wounds. Now what happens? Sometimes as he is walking around, those insects, they fall. So he used to pick those insects back again and put them in the same place where they were eating his flesh. And he just put them back again. He was so humble he was. For him it was like, my body is their food. How can I just deprive them of their food? So he used to just put them back in the same position. So when he came to know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come, he was so eager to meet the Lord. So he runs, in the morning, he goes to Kurma Brahman's house. Oh, where is Lord? I heard Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come here. And Kurma Brahman he himself is crying, and he's like, no, Lord just left, you missed him. When he hears that, Vasudev Vipra, he just immediately falls down unconscious. He's crying, how come I just missed the Lord? And then, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Supreme Lord himself, he's Antaryami. So he just comes back. Though he's already left, he just comes back to meet Vasudev Vipra. And then the moment he sees this Vasudev, he just hugs him. And his body is completely full of, it's a diseased body. But when Lord hugs him, he becomes very beautiful, and it becomes healthy, and, all the leprosy and everything is gone. And he becomes more beautiful. So then when he sees that, he's amazed, and he's like, why did you do that? I'm so fallen. Even nobody wants to even come near to me because of the bad odor that comes out from my body. And you are the Supreme Lord, and you came and hugged me. Oh, how can somebody be so merciful? And he's crying. And then out of his humility, he tells the Lord, oh, you shouldn't have done that. I deserve, to be infected with this disease. Why did you make me so beautiful? If I am beautiful now, I'll have ego. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, don't worry, just chant Hare Krishna, you will have no ego. So like that, a very, very important and beautiful pastime happens in this place called Sri Kurma Kshetra. So like that, he delivers the Kurma Brahman, and he also delivers Vasudeva Vipra. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gets this name Vasudeva Amrita Prada, one who has delivered the nectar to Vasudeva. And from there on, Mahaprabhu travels to Simhachalam. Now, Simhachalam is a very ancient temple of Lord Varaha Lakshmi Narsimha Swami. Now, Chalam basically means hill, and Simha is a lion. So the hill of a lion. So because the Varaha Lakshmi Narsimha Dev temple is on the top of the hill, so that hill is called Simhachalam. So this is a very ancient temple, and where they have these beautiful deities of Narsimha Dev. And these deities were personally worshipped by Prahlad Maharaj. So after killing Hiranyakashipu in Ahobilam, Lord washes his hands, and then he takes rest, and then when he's peaceful, he comes to this place, Simhachalam. And then Prahlad Maharaj, he retires, he handed over his kingdom to his son Virochan, and then he comes and settles in Simhachalam hill. And there he worships Lord Narsimha Dev till the fag end of his life. And then from here he goes back to Bhagavad Dham. And meanwhile, this beautiful deities of Varahalakshmi Narsimha Dev get buried into the earth, because there's nobody taking care. That was in Satya Yuga, and over the years nobody knows about about that deity. So after some time, it so happens that Purarava Maharaj, who is from the Luna dynasty, mentioned in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, was once traveling with his consort Urvashi. And as they were traveling by the airplane, when they fly over the Simhachalam hill, automatically their plane gets stopped, and they don't understand what's happening. Nothing is working, doesn't move forward, doesn't go backward. So they understand there's something out here, it's stopping us. So then they get down the airplane and they just walk around the whole place, and they don't know what to do. They're stuck there. So that night they take rest there on that hill. So in the night, Urvashi gets a dream, and in the dream, Nrsingadev is telling her that, I'm here somewhere and kindly retrieve me. So then Urvashi shares the dream with her husband. And then both of them are searching the whole hill. Where are the deities? And as they're just walking around the hills, they see a beautiful waterfall called the Gangadhara. Very refreshing waters. So then they take bath, and then they are in a very, very grave mood because they want to search the deities, but they're not able to find, though they are trying their best. So then Maharaj Pururava takes a vrata. Said, if I don't find the deities in 3 days from now, then I will give up my body. So then he's simply meditating, and then Lord appears and says, okay, I'm here in this place. And then Pururava Maharaj, he goes and he finds that the Lord is in the cluster of jasmine bushes. And then finally he takes out, because there are lots of ant hills around, and then finally he just digs the whole place and gets Lord out. And the moment he holds the deities in hand, there is a celestial voice, a divine voice, and says, no, cover the Lord with sandal paste. So then immediately Pururava Maharaj, he arranges for Abhishekam of the Lord, and he makes all the arrangements. And they have this milk Abhishek of the Lord, and then they cover the Lord with sandalwood paste. And sandalwood paste mixed with saffron and camphor and other herbs. And they just cool down the deity, because it's Nrsimhadev deity, so they need to, cool the deity down. So they put lots of paste on him. Even till today, you cannot see the Lord. The Lord is always covered by a sandalwood paste. So only once in a year, in the month of Vaishak, on Akshaya Tritiya day, they remove the sandal paste, and you can actually see the Nijarupa darshan of the Lord in a very, very small, beautiful deities, very little deities. So if you go for darshan, you will simply find in like a Shiva Linga, it's like a glowing golden hill of sandalwood paste. That's what you will see. But actually inside is a very beautiful deity of Varaha Lakshmi Narasimha Swami. Now, why is this Varaha and Narasimha together? The Leela goes like this. When Prahlad Maharaj wanted to worship Nrsimhadev was very happy with his service, and he asked him that, can I do something for you? So Prahlad said, yes, I want to see that Rupa, that form of yours which killed my uncle Hiranyaksha. So then Lord, just to please Prahlad, shows him, 2-in-1 form, Varaha and Narasimha both together. So if you see the Nijarupa of the deities has a face of Varaha, boar, and the body, the torso of human, the tail of a Simha. So it's like a Varaha, Lakshmi, Narasimha Swami, a combination form, which is very, very unique. So even today, it's covered with sandalwood paste. And if you want to have that Nijarupa darshan, you have to come here on an Akshaya Tritiya day. And early morning, they open the darshan, and there are lakhs and lakhs of people coming from all over India to have this darshan on this day. So you really need to book early, come early. And that darshan remains only for 12 hours. After that, they again start putting the sandalwood paste back, and they cover the deities. But the early morning darshan is very beautiful. They have the Sahasra Ghata Abhishek. With thousands of pots, they will do Abhishek for the Lord, and it's something to see once in a lifetime darshan. So this is what is Simhachalam about. Of course, there's so many other kathas related to, Sthala Puran talks about so many other legends, so many other stories of how when Prahlad was pushed, Hiranyakashipu had directed his soldiers to try and kill Prahlad in all different ways. So at one point they were actually pushing him inside the water but then Lord actually jumps, from the top of the hill and saves Prahlad. So because, Lord with such a pressure comes down there, his feet go all the way up to Patal. So so you can't see the legs of the Lord here. You can only see the upper part. So like that, there are so many other legends connected to Simhachalam. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came here, and that is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela chapter 8. How Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes here. And not only that, the famous Darshanarati shloka that we chant every day in front of Nishinga Dev, Shri Narsimha, Jai Narsimha, Jai Jai Narsimha, Praladeshu, Jaya Padma, Mukha Padma, Bringa. This verse was chanted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the first time in Simhachalam temple. When he looked at the deity, it just came out from his mouth, and it's there in Chaitanya Charitamritam. Of course, Andhra Pradesh is very famous for so many Narsimhadev temples. Maybe there are more than 300 Narsimhadev temples all over Andhra Pradesh, but the most famous temple is Simhachalam, because of his rich history of being worshipped by Prahlad Maharaj, being worshipped by Pururava, and then later on the Gajapati Rajas, they continued the Seva Puja. Of course, Simhachalam temple also suffered with lot of Islamic invasions, and which we can even see today. There's so many sculptures which are defaced, because of those Islamic attacks. So this is the history of Simhachalam temple. Of course, the Simhachalam temple is very special for us also because Srila Prabhupada came here. He visited the Simhachalam temple. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came here. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur came here. He came here 2 times. He came here in 1905, and then he came again in 1930. And on December 27th, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur established the lotus footprints of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Simhachalam temple courtyard as a memory of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's visit to Simhachalam. Simhachalam is also mentioned in the Skanda Puran. Jaimini Rishi talks about Simhachalam with the sages of Naimisharanya. He tells about the glories of Jiyada Narsimha. So it's a very, very ancient and important temple for all of us Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So apart from the Kurma temple and Simhachalam temple, there are other small and big temples in and around Vishakhapatnam that devotees can visit when they come here. One is Ramatirtham. This temple is little far from Vizag, around 40 to 50 kilometers. It is said that Lord Rama, Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman deities were worshipped by Pandavas when they were in exile in that place. But then afterwards, when they left, they handed over the Seva Puja of those deities to Vedagarbha. And then later on, the descendants of Vedagarbha Swami kept worshipping those deities. But after some time, when the Buddhist influence increased, then they just buried the deities inside the ground and left. And for many years, they were inside there. And then later it so happened once that there was a fearsome storm. There was one very, very pious devotee lady who was dumb, who started doing tapasya to please Lord Ram for her protection. So she was continuously praying and chanting Lord Ram's name. Though she was dumb, she was just meditating. She was dumb, so she was just meditating on Lord Ram. And then finally Lord Ram did appear on her tongue. So on her tongue, Sri Ram name was written. And then very miraculously she got her Vani back. She could speak again. She got her speech back. So then she spoke with, she informed the king, Sita Ramchandra Gajapati Raju, that, by the mercy of Lord Ram, I've got my speech back, and Lord Ram has, told me, in my heart, he has explained to me that he's there in his deity form somewhere here, and he's been there, lying there for many, many years now, and he's told me the exact place, so please help me and, to bring the deities out. So then the Gajapati Maharaj was more than willing to help, and then they finally excavated the deity, and then they established a temple there. But by the time the deities were in the ground, that place was already covered with a lot of water. So they actually had to go inside the water and get the deities out. So that is why that place is very famously called Ramatirtham, because Tirtha is like the Charnamrita, the water which you take. So the Lord Rama came out of that water. So then that place is Ramatirtham. Even today we can go and visit and see those ancient deities of Sita, Ram, Lakshman, which were worshipped by the Pandavas. And there's another beautiful temple here which is called Kunti Madhav temple. That is a very, very special temple. We know that there are 5 Madhavas all over India. We know there is Setu Madhava in Rameshwaram. And then we know there is the Sundar Madhava in Tiruvantapuram. And there is Bindu Madhava in Varanasi. And then there is Venu Madhava in Prayag. And like this we have a Kunti Madhav temple in Vishakhapatnam. So it so happened that when the Pandavas were on exile, Kunti Mata was so worried about the Pandavas. Are they doing well or not? So at this place, when she was on her Tirtha Yatra, she's just remembering the Lord, that are my children okay? So Lord appears in front of her and reassures her, don't worry, they're all doing very well. So because the Lord appeared to please Kunti Devi, here he is called as Kunti Madhav. So a very, very beautiful deity of Lord Krishna, black Krishna, beautiful looking Krishna deity is here called Kunti Madhav. And very close to Kunti Madhav temple is the Ananta Padmanabha Swami temple. That temple is on the top of hill. It's almost like maybe 1,300 steps. But recently I heard that they have come up with a nice road and you can actually go by a vehicle all the way up. But in the beginning days, there was no such road. So devotees actually had to climb 1,300 steps to go up there. So basically that is a place, they say that when the Pandavas were on exile, they did stay on that hill for some time. And one day they were just remembering the Lord. And while they were remembering the Lord, just out of their remembrance, the stone which was lying there manifested the Lord's Shankha and the chakra and the tilak of the Lord. And they became so happy. So and they started worshipping that place. So after they left, the worship continued, and even today you can see those self-manifested imprints of Lord's Shankha and Chakra and the beautiful tilak, and that's called the Ananta Padmanabha Swami temple. So like that, there's so many temples: Simhachalam, Sri Kurmam, Ramatirtham, and then there's another temple in Bhimli, which is called the Bhimli Narsimha Swami temple. That is also a very, very beautiful temple of Narsinghadev. As I told you, Andhra Pradesh is famous for many, many Narsinghadev temples. And this is very special because this is in that same place, Bhimunipatnam, where the Pandavas stayed for some time. There's another temple in Bobili. It's called the Venugopala Swami temple. And that is very famous for those who want to have children. Because the Sthala Puran says that Narad Muni himself came and established the temple there, Venugopal Swami temple. And it also has a Pushkarini where Kashyap Muni and Aditi took bath. So, and there is also a Venkateshwara Swami temple. And it is said that Lord Venkateshwara goes from here to Tirupati and comes back in the evening to take rest here. So like that, there are temples in Bobili. And of course, there's another temple called Annavaram, where Veera Venkata Satyanarayan Swami temple, the temple of Lord Narayan, which is also on top of a hill and which also has self-manifested deities. So like that, there's so many temples in and around Vishakhapatnam. So this place is very special. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came here, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came here, different Vaishnavacharyas came here. And for us it is very special because Srila Prabhupada came here. And February 17, 1972, Srila Prabhupada came to Vishakhapatnam. And he was here up to 22nd February 1972. He was here for almost 1 week. And he had come here on the invitation of Puri Maharaj. And those days, Puri Maharaj had a very nice ashram. Even now they have the ashram, but now it's quite big. Those days it was very simple, just a single story building with some 8 rooms and just 5 minutes walk from the beach. So Prabhupada was very happy. He came with around 15 devotees entourage to Vishakhapatnam city. And Puri Maharaj gave Srila Prabhupada room right next to his room, and Prabhupada was so happy. He took it as an expression of his friendship. And the devotees who were in Prabhupada's entourage were mentioning that we never saw Prabhupada so happy and so intimate dealings with his god brothers, because we did see him in Bombay and other places interacting with his god brothers, but it was very formal. He said, we saw in Bombay that Prabhupada got down from his Vyasasana and paid Dandavat Pranam to his god brothers, but here what we saw in Vizag was so intimate dealings and so beautiful relationship and friendship among the god brothers. So all of them had been allotted rooms, and they stayed in Puri Maharaj's ashram. And if you in Satsvarup Das Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada's biography, there's a very beautiful detail given about Srila Prabhupada's visit to Vishakhapatnam city. Even today, you can actually go to Puri Maharaj's ashram, and you can see that room where Prabhupada stayed, and they have very kindly put a lot of pictures there of Prabhupada's stay there, whatever memories they have, and they've exclusively allotted one room for that purpose. So when Prabhupada came here with his devotees, they used to have feast prasadam every day. Prabhupada had given some money to the Gaudiya Math devotees, so they were cooking feast every day. So they had deep fried potatoes and sandesh and ram keli and shira and French fries and pakoras and malpuas, and devotees were so happy. And there was one brahmachari called Anandadas Brahmachari. He was elderly gentleman, but he was cooking and serving and a lot of enthusiasm. So Maharaj tells in this biography that how, in the courtyard, everybody used to have prasadam together. There was one row of Matajis and one row of Prabhujis, and Anandadas Brahmachari used to walk, in the middle on the aisle and very briskly distribute prasadam to all of them. And Prabhupada used to sit on one corner on a wooden chair, fingering his japa beads. And then he used to keep telling, give him more, give him some more. Yeah, you give him some more puris, give him some more malpua. And he kept doing that till the devotees were almost full, up to the neck. And then when they were all done, Prabhupada used to chant the Prema Dhwani, and then everybody used to say Jai, and they become so happy. And one day Prabhupada called all of them and he told them that, did you observe, just see what a beautiful behavior Anandadas Brahmachari has. He's serving you all and he's so happy and he feels so satisfied in serving you. More than eating himself, he's more happy in serving you. And this is a symptom of a real Vaishnava, pure Vaishnava. So he was so happy and so appreciative of Anandadas Brahmachari's etiquettes and behavior. But then the devotees ended up eating so much that one day nobody turned up for Mangalarti. So the Gaudiya Math temple, they had given accommodation to Prabhupada in the quarters, but for the devotees they had some small huts like, on the roadside where the devotees were staying. And one day in the morning nobody came for Mangalarti because they had eaten so heavily. So in the morning when Prabhupada saw there is nobody, so he actually went into those huts, and he's just opening the door, knocking with his canes, and the devotees are like all sleepy, and there's like, who is knocking? And they open the door and they're like, Prabhupada is standing there, and they immediately bow down and they start pranam mantra, namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasad. So instead of talking to Prabhupada, they're just doing the pranam mantra, namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini, and Prabhupada just took his cane and was beating them on the back. What is this? Why didn't you turn up for Mangalarti? Now, while he's doing that with the devotees, because the devotees are chanting his pranam mantra loudly, the devotees who are on the other huts, corresponding nearby huts, they all can understand, oh, Prabhupada has come. So they're all, getting up, they're all sleepy heads, and they just get up and they know Prabhupada has come to wake them up. So this happened in Vishakhapatnam. And because Puri Maharaj's ashram was very near to the beach, Prabhupada used to go every day for morning walks on the seashore. And Yamuna Mataji says that he was so kind. He took all of us. It's not that, some of us had to stay back. Everybody went with Prabhupada. And though we were so many people, we all could hear Prabhupada. We all could hear what Prabhupada is saying. And then Gurudas Prabhu mentions a very humorous pastime. He says that every day I used to go and walk with Prabhupada, but one day it so happened that I could never realize. I was just chanting in front of the temple and Prabhupada already left with the devotees for his morning walk. And then when I realized that Prabhupada had left, I also wanted to go, so I ran without wearing my shoes. Now when you go to the beach, there's so many barnacles and there's so many rocks. So he's just jumping over them to reach to Prabhupada. So he's getting hurt in his legs. So he's like hobbling with pain and putting his left and right feet up and down. So when he reached to Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, "Is it hurting?" He said, "Yes, Prabhupada." "It's painful?" "Yes, Prabhupada." "Then why didn't you wear shoes?" Then he said, "But Prabhupada, when I'm with you, then there's no pain." Then Prabhupada said, "Oh really? Then why not you cut your throat?" Then everybody started laughing. Then Prabhupada said, "There are already so many tapasya. Why do you want to create a new one? Why not you wear shoes?" So then everybody started laughing. And then Guru Kripa Prabhu, he says that when we were walking with Srila Prabhupada used to talk so many philosophies and so many nice things, but I was new and it was difficult for me to register everything that he was speaking. But then I thought in my mind, even if I can't understand what he's saying, at least I can walk on his footsteps. So when Prabhupada used to walk on the beach, whatever the footprints that were made in the sand, he used to walk on them, at least I can follow his footsteps. That's what he says in his memory, And then Tejas Prabhu, he says that when we were walking on the beach, one day Srila Prabhupada took up the topic of a dog. He was quoting some slok from Chanakya Pandit, and he was glorifying dog, how the dog has 5 qualities. The dog is so sincere, the dog is so satisfied, the dog is so obedient. And he was going on and on about dog. And Tejas Prabhu was like, we were like, why is Prabhupada talking so much about a dog? And then at the end, Prabhupada says, so we should all become Krishna's dog. And then they understand, acha, that's why Prabhupada is explaining so much about the qualities of a dog. And then Vishakha Mataji says that once we were on the beach, and sometimes the dog, they just follow us. Sometimes some dog is barking and disturbing us. So Prabhupada just takes his cane and, he just shows to the dog and they just run away. But once it so happened that the cow was approaching and Prabhupada gave so much space, ample space for the cow to move away. So we were thinking how come Prabhupada didn't shoo away the cow? And then Prabhupada said that, what had happened to him shortly after taking sannyas, how one of the cow had, one of the cow had attacked Prabhupada. So and Prabhupada from there on was so careful. He didn't want to come on the wrong side of the cow, so he just allows a lot of space for the cow to move. So like that, And once Nanda Kumar, Prabhupada's secretary, he said, Prabhupada, since we are in Visakhapatnam, you're always telling us, go to the beach, go and take bath in the ocean. So I understand that the spiritual master will give only those instructions which are good for our spiritual benefit. So how are we benefited by going and taking bath in the beach? Because is it not Maya? Because, when I go to the beach, that water is so cool for my body, and that warmth of the sun on my body, it feels so good. I feel like I'm enjoying my senses. So is it okay? And then Prabhupada said, yeah, because the rays of the sun are coming from Krishna. That is Krishna. The taste of water is Krishna. You are surrounded by Krishna. Krishna is everywhere. So how can you forget Krishna? So you remember Krishna in whatever you do. Then Panchajanya Prabhu, he said, but Prabhupada, what about swimming? Is that not Maya? And Prabhupada said, no, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also did a lot of swimming and playing, with ball in the water. But the whole point is, remember Krishna. Don't forget Krishna, that's all. So like that, devotees asked so many beautiful questions to Prabhupada. And when Prabhupada was here in Visakhapatnam, he gave classes in social clubs, in schools, and in different halls. he gave once a lecture in Ramakrishna Hall. There were thousands of people attending the program, and the program was so successful. You know, Prabhupada made the whole audience dance, you know, and the kirtan went on for 1 hour, and all the devotees, they formed a ring around Prabhupada, and they danced, and everybody was in ecstasy. So like that, he had many, many programs. In fact, I have a very sweet memory associated with this, because couple of years ago, I was invited to a school as a chief guest for their Independence Day celebration. So after the celebration, they said, "Madam, we want to give you a gift." I said, "Yeah, go ahead." So I was on the stage, and they give me a book, you know, a wrapped book. And I'm like, "Thank you." And then they said, "Do you want to open it in front of us?" And I said, "Yeah, all right." So I opened it. And I see that's Prabhupada's Krishna book. So I was not very much amazed, because we are selling Krishna book every day. So they're just waiting for my expression, and I don't have any expression, because we were selling Krishna books every day. There are hundreds of Krishna books in our bookstall. So then the principal, who was an old man, 75, 80-year-old man, he said, "Do you want to open the first page, madam?" And I said, "Okay." So I opened the first page. And what I see, it's handwritten and signed by Srila Prabhupada himself. "Your well-wisher always, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada." And I'm like, "What is this?" And he said, "When Srila Prabhupada came to Visakhapatnam in 1972, I attended one of his lectures, and I took this book from him. He personally gave it to me, and now that I'm old, I thought that I can just gift it to you. You'll appreciate it better." And I said, "Yeah, definitely, and thank you so much." I still have that book, which one of the school principal got from Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada gave many classes here. In every evening, he had some or the other program. In fact, there's one very funny incident of how in one of his programs, there was one anthropologist from America. And Prabhupada asked him, "So what do you do?" So he said, "Well, I came from the US to study primitive tribe." And Prabhupada said, "Why do you have to study primitive tribe? Why not you study exalted people? And you can learn something from them." And then Prabhupada told him a funny story about a poor man who had nothing to do. So he just boiled a cob of corn. And after the corn was boiled, he just sat and, took out one kernel from the corn and eating, one, because he has nothing to do. He has to pass time. So that way he could pass few hours just to eat one corn. So Prabhupada said that, this is waste of time. Why not you study, learn people, exalted people, and learn something from them? What's the use of wasting your time in learning what the primitive tribe are doing? So like that, many, many amazing pastimes of Srila Prabhupada in Visakhapatnam. And also the pastime of how Srila Prabhupada went to Simhachalam. And, he was so happy. Especially he enjoyed the whole trip, the ascent and the descent. When you actually go up the hill of Simhachalam, it's breathtaking. You can see the whole view of Visakhapatnam city. And then you have to pass to the orchards of mango and jackfruit and cashew and pineapple, and it's really beautiful. And then the temple itself is majestic. And then you have to go through the tunnels, there are thick walls. And then you go inside the sanctum sanctorium. So Madhavananda Prabhu says that he was also with Prabhupada, and he says that when Prabhupada went inside, he was so grave. And then when we stepped inside the sanctum sanctorium, Prabhupada said, "Chant the Narsimha prayers." And immediately we all started, "Tava kara kamala varena kam adbhuta shringam dalita hiranya kashipu tanuvringam." So they all started chanting, and Prabhupada was so grave. And then after that, when Prabhupada came out, because there's a certain place you can go up to the car, and after that there are some steps. So there were 4 people who were carrying Prabhupada in a palanquin. So then they rested the palanquin under a banyan tree. And Prabhupada's secretary Nanda Kumar, he just took a champaka flower and he gave it to Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada immediately put it in between his fingers. And Prabhupada, looking at the champaka flower, Prabhupada said, "This is the color of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Gauranga Mahaprabhu looks just like this, And then he says that this champaka flowers, they look good and they smell good." And then rest of the morning, Prabhupada kept looking at that flower, and he never took it out between his fingers. And he was in such a ecstatic mood. So Guru Kripa Prabhu mentions that, in places like this, we can clearly understand the difference between us and Prabhupada. It's not that Prabhupada was different from us only because of his knowledge, but he was also different because of his devotion. The kind of devotion that he had. And then, of course, Guru Kripa Prabhu says that you can appreciate this pilgrimage places based on your spiritual practice or your spiritual advancement. You can appreciate according to your advancement in spiritual life. And said we could clearly see the difference, the way Prabhupada used to interact and behave. And then they had a Brahmana guide who were taking them around and telling them Sthala Puran, and then they mentioned how they were from the Ramanuja Sampradaya, which with big earlobes and, hanging earrings and, so they were very happy. They visited the Simhachalam temple. So then they were staying in Puri Maharaj's ashram for some time, and then by 22nd they were ready to leave. And the devotees have fond memories of how in the evenings or sometimes mid-afternoon, Prabhupada used to simply remove his shirt and sit up there in the open space and take some nice sun. And then he used to drink freshly pressed sugarcane juice. And then Prabhupada at one point said, the way the cool breeze are blowing, this is how it is in Vaikuntha. This is how it is in Vaikuntha. Cool breeze blowing. This is so nice. So that's what he said in Vizag. And then, of course, on 22nd, it was time for them to leave. So they all packed up and they invited Puri Maharaj to come to Mayapur. And then they were on their way to railway station. So when they reached Visakhapatnam railway station, something really special happened there. Because it is in 1972. So the railway station was a simple one. There's no shelter. It was all open and a lot of coconut trees. And it was quite warm. It was afternoon time. So they were all thirsty. So Shyam Sundar Prabhu, he just climbed up the coconut tree and got a coconut and gave it to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada drank the coconut. And then Prabhupada, after drinking some, he passed it on to Shyam Sundar Prabhu. And then Shyam Sundar Prabhu drank some. And then Shyam Sundar Prabhu was asked by Prabhupada that why not you pass it to the Kirtan team. Lots of devotees were doing Kirtan because, they were early to the station and they were just doing Kirtan. So then he passed on to the Kirtan devotees. Now because they were doing Kirtan on the top of their voice, they were all so thirsty. So every devotee who was, given that coconut, he was not thinking that maybe I should keep some for the next devotee. He was just drinking as much as he can. But still, the water was not getting emptied. So he passed to the other devotee and that devotee drank to his, content, whatever he wanted to drink. And still there is water. So he passed to another devotee and another devotee. And they kept on passing to everybody until everybody was satisfied. The water was still there in the coconut. So that was one amazing coconut. Maybe it just had the touch of Srila Prabhupada, or rather pure devotee's desire, and it just satisfy everybody. And then Shyam Sundar Prabhu says how finally we were on board on the train. The devotees were in the other compartment and Shyam Sundar Prabhu and Prabhupada were in the first class compartment. It was like a special compartment with only 2 people. So Shyam Sundar Prabhu says that Prabhupada was in such a good mood. He kept on talking and joking and humming and singing and playing some tapes till 10:30 in the night. And then finally Prabhupada said, okay, now I'll take rest. So at 10:30 Prabhupada slept, Shyam Sundar Prabhu slept. And then suddenly in the middle of the night at 12 o'clock, Prabhupada said, Shyam Sundar. And Shyam Sundar Prabhu was like, what happened? He just came down. Yes, Prabhupada. He said, take dictation. And then Prabhupada started giving dictation. And then Shyam Sundar Prabhu says that, during those times we can see the difference, We just think maybe Prabhupada is taking rest, but he's not taking rest. He's always thinking about how to spread Krishna consciousness, While we think that he's taking rest, he's just thinking about how to please Krishna. So like that, there are a lot of beautiful pastimes of Srila Prabhupada at Vizag. So when Prabhupada was in Visakhapatnam, he said these words in Puri Maharaj's ashram when the very cool breeze was blowing. He said, this is how it is in Vaikuntha. So for us, all of us devotees at Visakhapatnam, we feel that Prabhupada said this in Visakhapatnam, that this is how it is in Vaikuntha. So we should really try to make Visakhapatnam into Vaikuntha. And that is possible. Where is Vaikuntha? Where there are devotees. So we have to make Visakhapatnam into another Vaikuntha. And that is possible when we preach Srila Prabhupada's message, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message, when we assist Srila Prabhupada's mission. So here in Vishakhapatnam, we have taken up building of a massive Radha Krishna temple project. By Srila Prabhupada's mercy, in Vizag, ISKCON has a beautiful 3-acre land directly facing the ocean, bordered on 3 sides with hills, and a beautiful project is coming up with the main temple of Radha Krishna, Gaunithai, Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, Maharani, Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman, and Kalyan Mandapam in the first phase of construction. And then later we are planning to have a Vedic planetarium, an underwater meditation hall, a Govinda's restaurant, a 100 rooms guest house, which is almost completed. Some other marble work is going on, and a nice beautiful Dasavatar garden, a Goshala, a Vedic school. So a lot of projects are being planned here. And the beauty about this temple is the location. It's just right overlooking the Bay of Bengal. And the construction is going on in high speed, and we request the blessings of all the devotees around the world that we can somehow complete this project as an offering of love to Srila Prabhupada by 2022. Because 2022 is very special for us, because Srila Prabhupada came to Vishakhapatnam in February 1972. So 2022 is like completion of 50 years of his first visit to Vizag. And if we can complete this project as an offering to him, I'm sure Prabhupada and the Guru Parampara will be so happy with all of us. So this is what is Vishakhapatnam all about, and I wish and pray that not only virtual, someday you all can actually come here and physically visit Vishakhapatnam. It's a very, very beautiful city, a very, very happening city with a lot of beautiful temples and very kind-hearted people around here, and a very, very conducive place for bhajan because of, the not only physical beauty, but not so much pollution, and the way it is situated with the hills and ocean, lots of peace and serenity, a very calm and quiet place. So do come to Vishakhapatnam, and when you come to Vishakhapatnam, do visit ISKCON temple here. So thank you so much, all the devotees. I'll end it here and hope you have a good yatra. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Sab Krishna, Krishna, Krishna.